Credit cards are often marketed as helpful tools. They promise convenience, they promise rewards, they promise flexibility, and technically they're not lying. But for many people, credit cards quietly make saving money much harder without them even realizing it. Not because credit cards are evil, not because people are irresponsible, but because of how credit cards change the way our brains experience spending. If you've ever looked at your bank account and thought, I don't remember spending that much, there's a good chance credit cards played a role. And if you've ever struggled to save money consistently, even while earning a decent income, credit cards may be part of the reason. This video isn't about quitting credit cards, it's not about cutting them up, and it's definitely not about fear. It's about understanding what credit cards do quietly so you can use them without letting them use you. Let's start with something simple. Spending money with cash feels very different from spending with a credit card. When you pay with cash, you see the money leave your hand. There's friction, there's awareness, there's a small moment of hesitation. With a credit card, that moment disappears. You tap, you swipe, you move on. The pain of spending is delayed, and delayed pain changes behavior. When spending doesn't feel real in the moment, it becomes easier to spend a little more than planned. Not in big, dramatic ways, but in small, forgettable ones. An extra item at the store, a slightly nicer option, a subscription you don't really need. Individually, none of these feel like a problem, but together they quietly shrink the space where saving is supposed to happen. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings about money. People think overspending comes from big mistakes, but most overspending comes from small decisions made without friction. Credit cards remove friction, and when friction disappears, spending increases, not because people are careless, but because the system is designed that way. Now let's talk about rewards. Cashback, points, miles. On the surface, rewards feel like free money, and in some cases they are. But rewards only work in your favor if spending would have happened anyway. The problem is that rewards subtly encourage more spending. When you know you're getting something back, it becomes easier to justify purchases you might have skipped. I'll get points for this. It's basically a discount. I'm earning rewards anyway. These thoughts don't feel dangerous, but over time they change your baseline for spending. You don't just buy what you need, you buy what feels reasonable plus a little extra, and that extra comes directly from money that could have been saved. Then there's the timing problem. Credit cards separate spending from consequences. You spend now, you pay later. That separation makes it harder to connect your actions with results. When your checking account doesn't immediately go down, your brain doesn't register the cost the same way. So you keep spending as if nothing changed, until the statement arrives. And when it does, it often feels larger than expected. That surprise creates stress, and stress leads to short-term decisions. Instead of saving, people switch into survival mode. They pay the minimum, they delay saving, they tell themselves they'll fix it next month, and next month becomes a pattern. This is how credit cards quietly interrupt saving, not through one big mistake, but through repeated small disconnects. Now let's talk about minimum payments. Minimum payments are one of the most misleading features of credit cards. They make balances feel manageable. A large number becomes a small monthly obligation, and that illusion keeps people comfortable carrying debt longer than they should. When you only focus on the minimum, the total balance fades into the background, and as long as the minimum feels affordable, saving feels optional. Why save money when you're still paying for past spending? This creates a mental tug-of-war. Money that could go into savings gets pulled toward debt instead. And the longer that tension exists, the harder it becomes to build momentum. There's another quiet issue: mental accounting. People often separate money into imaginary categories. Checking money feels different from credit money. Rewards feel different from income. Future payments feel less real than current ones. Credit cards take advantage of this. Spending on credit doesn't feel like spending real money, so people protect their checking account but slowly drain their future income. Saving suffers because the future keeps getting more expensive. Then there's lifestyle inflation. Credit cards make it easy to upgrade life quietly. A slightly nicer apartment, more eating out, convenience services instead of time. None of these feel extreme, but they raise your baseline. And once your baseline rises, saving the same percentage becomes harder. Not because you're worse with money, but because your fixed costs grew quietly. This is why many people earn more over time, but don't feel more secure. Credit cards help them grow into their income faster than their savings. Now here's the important part. Credit cards aren't the enemy. Used intentionally, they can be useful tools. The problem is using them unconsciously. So how do you use credit cards without letting them sabotage your saving? First, you need to reconnect spending with awareness. That doesn't mean tracking every dollar. It means creating small pauses. Simple rules help. Waiting 24 hours for non-essential purchases. Checking your balance weekly, not monthly. Treating your credit card like a debit card with delay, not extra money. Second, separate saving from spending entirely. If your savings depend on what's left after credit card payments, saving will always struggle. Saving has to happen first, before spending and before payments. Automation matters even more when credit cards are involved. Third, stop using rewards as justification. Rewards should be a bonus, not a reason. If you wouldn't buy it without rewards, rewards don't make it a good decision. Fourth, keep credit limits psychologically small. Just because you're approved for a high limit doesn't mean you should treat it as available money. Lower limits create natural boundaries, and boundaries protect savings. Finally, forgive past mistakes. Credit cards create shame for a lot of people. Shame leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to worse outcomes. Understanding how credit cards work psychologically isn't about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming control. Saving money in a credit card world requires intention, not fear, not perfection, just awareness. When spending feels real again, saving becomes easier. Not instantly, not magically, but steadily. And steady is enough. Credit cards don't have to stop you from saving money, but ignoring how they work almost guarantees they will. Save intentionally, build stability, repeat consistently. If you want more realistic money guidance like this, you can subscribe to the channel. New videos every week.